What's up, you little freaks, and welcome back to the channel. Before I start the video, I just want to say first, if you haven't watched the Neutopia 1 review that I released last week, I strongly urge you to check that one out first, simply because I go over a lot of gameplay details in that one that I'm just not going to cover here since the games are so similar in that regard. So again, if you haven't watched that video first, I'm going to throw a link in the description below. Click that and then come back to this one. Otherwise, on to the review. Neutopia 2 was released for the PC Engine in 1991 in Japan by Hudson Soft and in North America by Turbo Technologies for the Turbografx-16. It is the sequel to Neutopia, which was released earlier in 1989. Now, I just recently released a video reviewing the first Neutopia, and while it had its flaws, I ultimately really enjoyed it, and here's how I surmised this sequel in that video. There's a sequel called Neutopia 2, and I've heard that that game fixes all the flaws with this one. So if that's the case, I'm definitely going to be taking a look at that one too, and I might do that one on the next review because if it does that, if it fixes the flaws in this game, that game probably kicks all the ass, and I am excited to check that one out. So, does this live up to its reputation? Let's find out, but the answer is no. As far as the story goes, you are the unnamed son of the original Giuseppe, the hero from the first game, and your mom wakes up from a little nap where she dreams some bullshit and has no problem immediately sending you on a suicide mission to find out what happened to her husband instead of doing it herself, which I found that in this world, nobody wants to do jack shit, but they have no problem asking you to do it. They also have no problem charging you money up the fucking ass for items you need to get the job done, but okay, I'm getting off track here. So in this game, you have a deadbeat mom, right? And she puts way too much stock into the meaning of dreams like dumbasses always do in movies and games. And it's no surprise, really. She comes off like the hippie type that seems really chill, but then turns into a waking nightmare and keys your car after you sleep with her. And she's probably all into like spiritualism and Reiki and shit. But the graphics in this are better than the first, and so are the mechanics in a certain way. In the first game, you couldn't attack diagonally. In this game, you can. And like every review I see on this game, the reviewer blows their load over that one simple detail, but I don't know if it makes the game better, as it's awkward at all times. And in the first game, with the wand, you could actually attack diagonally. I did it all the time, just not with the sword. In this game, attacking diagonally is a pain in the ass and awkward at best. It's like the game doesn't want you to use it, so it's not like it's an amazingly integrated new feature. I wanted to love this game, I really did, but despite being more of the same, this game pissed me off non-stop, somehow way more than the first one. The first half of this was amazing fun, and it was so much better than the prequel, just like Your Wife's Hotter Sister, and it really gave me a good first impression, and on top of that, it seemed to realize that exploration can be amusing, just like Your Wife's Sister, and making your character better and stronger to overcome later obstacles, much like Zelda, is essentially the core mechanics here, and in a game like this, that makes it interesting. Neutopia 2 doesn't hold your hand one bit, and a few times it's lacking in direction or hinting to the player where to go, but it does try a little harder than the first game with random characters placed throughout to give you a little sense of where to go. Sometimes like directly on the nose though, with very specific directions of where to go, which sort of tells me that even the game designers felt that their game was a little too vague in places and took steps to correct it after the game was already built. If you look around, you can find more health power-ups, new wands to destroy enemies with, which are completely missable if you aren't searching for them, bomb power-ups, a rainbow ladder like in the first game, a lantern to light dark rooms again just like in the first one, and even falcon shoes that you receive from Kareem the Cobbler that makes your character run faster, which is an absolute must since the default speed in this is shit. Kareem the Cobbler, though, is a kick-ass name, and I wish he was a little more expeditious in getting you these because at first the walking speed is absolutely embarrassing. Like, obviously the hero in this game is in no hurry to actually save the world. God damn.
What the fuck is with this guy? Who is he?
This game makes you feel like if you do the work and look around, you can become a badass that kicks in assholes. That is, until you get to the later parts of the game where none of that matters. The last 25% of this game exists to continuously sap away your health every second, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it makes this game suck fucking ass. Seriously, there are unmarked traps everywhere and enemies that exist solely to ruin your day outside of the game. Later on, it seems like every room in every dungeon, the doors close until you defeat all the cheap enemies in the room, which is stupid. And the hit detection in this sequel is just as fucked up as it was in the first one, so good luck killing any enemy without taking damage. And later enemies take only about a half an hour to kill each if I'm being generous, even if you have all the power increasing items, which I had in the end game. There's hidden sword block traps everywhere, hidden in ordinary looking blocks that you normally push to open doors that will spring out and damage you. There's enemies that look like blocks that only come to life the second you touch them and damage you, and there's no way to know that before they damage you. There's spike traps everywhere on the floor that are activated by secret blocks that aren't clear at all until you hit them and take damage. There's secret switches that activate arrows that come at you from all directions that are impossible to block and you take damage. This game straight up fucking sucks like that, and after an hour or two of constantly taking damage from the cheapest shit, you will grow to hate this game. The first half is fun, but the second half is pure shit, and to put this into perspective, I made it all the way to the last boss, Dearth, or as I like to call him, Dearth the Dirty Dickhole, and I died. I turned off my console and I have no intention of completing this game because I would have to slog through the final dungeon again, and I'm just not doing that. I've got better things to do with my time. The cheap bullshit on display here is aggravating, and it makes me not care enough to see it through to the end because since the game devs couldn't be bothered to care about how this game plays, I can't be bothered to care about finishing it. Let's be clear. It doesn't fix the issues, it makes them worse. Look at this fuckhole charging me $500 each for every health potion. That is outrageous. Like, dude, do you want me to help you or not? What an asshole. $500 is insane. Like, I can buy a PS5 for that, and it just means now the game is going to make me grind for money, which is never fine. Like, that's 50 blowjobs I have to give in the Heights, and someone is probably still gonna steal my Oakleys. And even though I bitched about money in the first game, I never once had to grind for it. And what happened to the $200 this same guy was charging at the start of the game? This is illegal price gouging, and Giusetta's son should stab this piece of shit to death and steal all of his potions and piss on his corpse. Like, trying to get by is one thing. Taking advantage of a bad situation to turn a quick profit in the actual end times is a crime punishable by death. I'll fucking kill this guy. Anyway, the dungeons are a zesty diversion for the most part, and generally well laid out. The bosses are largely pretty neat, and you get a decent variety from a sandworm that is exactly like in A Link to the Past, and since this game came out a few months before that game, one could argue Zelda ripped this one off. It didn't, but you could argue that if you're an asshole. You can fight 2 Mothras from Godzilla, a frog with some bullshit on its back, an ice cube robot that shoots lasers and punches you, an octopus, a weird shape, Medusa, and Dearth, which I'll briefly talk about. Briefly. Overall, I enjoyed most of the boss fights, but not all of them. The further I progressed into Neutopia, the more I hated it and hated myself. Everything found in the later game can easily be blamed completely on bad game design. I bitched about this in the first one, but it holds even more true here. The enemies are annoying as heck. They hit you all over the place with no relation to where they physically really are on the screen. It doesn't matter where they are. If they overlap with you, you take damage. And the biggest issue is with your wands, as you can hit enemies from far away, but the game 1/3 of the time sucks them towards you like a vacuum and gives you unavoidable damage. And it's totally random, so it makes using these wands a crapshoot. Why even bother trying to keep your distance from enemies and attacking them with the wands, which I assume is their intended purpose, when the game will randomly fuck you over and give you damage anyway? You might as well just always use your sword, as if you have any kind of skill and understand the game's bullshit, you might actually be able to avoid some damage while using it. The music is nothing to write home about, and it's comparable to the first one. This game is on a hue card, so it's pretty limited on what it can offer up music-wise, but here it suffices. So, overall, What's my take on this sequel? Is it better than Neutopia 1? I guess my answer to this question is kind of. I would say the first half is indeed better than the prequel, but the second half of this game was far more infuriating to a degree I never experienced playing Neutopia 1. Actually, I kinda hated the very end of this game. I got to the final boss, Dirth the Dirty Dick Hole, and died. I would rather cut my own dick off than play through that slog of a last dungeon to fight this boss again. The aggravation involved in doing that is not worth it for me to see the end, so I'm just going to leave it there. Is it worth playing? Yes and no. I would suggest you play it up until you get to this volcano, then turn off your console and never look back. It's a somewhat polished and competent game, but it takes no issue hurtling some of the worst 80s and 90s era tropes your way every second of the game to irritate you completely, and frankly, the game never earned it in my opinion. It didn't buy me dinner first, it didn't finger me, it just goes straight to fucking you over, and it will drive you crazy in the second half of the game, so just enjoy the first half and then tell this game to hit the dusty trail after that. Thanks for watching this review of Neutopia 2. Unfortunately, it didn't live up to the praise that it seemingly gets, but for the most part I enjoyed it, until I didn't. And also, thank you for sticking around to the end. If you enjoyed this content, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below if you've played this one and agree or disagree with my review. I will see you little nasties on the next video.
Son, this is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass! You see what happens? This is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass, Larry! You see what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass?